I'd like to call to order the Village of Riverside Board of Trustees regular meeting for Thursday, March 3rd, 2022 to order. We can all stand. Please say the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Ethan, would you please call the roll?
President Ballerini.
Here.
Trustee Gallegos.
Here.
Trustee Marshazga.
Here.
Trustee Hannan.
Here.
Trustee Evans.
Here.
Trustee Clarity.
Here.
Trustee Pollock.
Here. Thank you.
Village Manager Francis.
Here.
Village Attorney Molina.
Here.
Also present Village Clerk Sewell.
Thank you. Lance, do you need to say something about Trustee Pollock being remote?
Everyone should know that Trustee Pollock has informed village staff that due to family medical reasons, he is unable to attend physically the meeting this evening. That is one of the qualifying events that would allow him to participate remotely. Just to remind the public that although meetings were virtual for a while and anyone could participate remotely during that time, we are back in a full open meeting mode, and so there needs to be one of the specific reasons that allow a trustee to participate remotely, and Trustee Pollock qualifies, in my opinion, so he can participate.
Thank you. First on the agenda is the President's report. I only have one thing, and that is the presentation regarding the mental health services. Director Buckley.
Thank you, President Ballerini, members of the Village Board, and Manager Francis for allowing me a few moments to discuss a new service here at Riverside. At the last Village Board of Trustees meeting on February 17th, the members of the Village Board approved an agreement for crisis services offered by Presence Behavioral Health. This service is an essential component of our public safety responses here in Riverside. Legislation known as the Community Emergency Services and Support Act, otherwise known as CESA, became law on February 1st of this year with an implementation date of July of 2022. The purpose of this act is to transfer first responder duties from law enforcement to mental health professionals when someone reports a mental health crisis in progress or requests behavioral support. This requires having access to mental health professionals around the clock every day of the year. I am pleased to say that with the implementation of this new service, we are one step closer to accomplishing this goal. This has not been an easy task. As a village, a police department, and the fire department, we have explored many different options and programs. One of the programs we explored and ultimately chose was the Presence Behavioral Health Program. It is a program that has been used for several years by two of our neighboring communities, Brookfield and North Riverside. This program has proven to be very successful in those communities with outstanding services. The decision was made to complete the missing piece of the puzzle and add Riverside to this group. Riverside currently shares boundaries, our dispatch center, as well as schools with Brookfield and North Riverside. So this partnership truly makes sense. So at this point, I'd like to introduce Sybil Curavella, who is the Director of Crisis Stabilization at Presence Behavioral Health, to give an overview of the program that they offer. Sybil?
Hi. I want to first off thank you all for choosing to partner with our agency to provide these services. We've provided these services in this area for the past 30 years. I myself have been with the organization for 15 years and started off as a police crisis worker myself. So our goal is to provide support to police departments by being the mental health experts when it comes to mental health needs that they're coming to on the scene. But in addition to that, we provide support to the residents through individual meetings whenever is needed, and residents are able to contact our crisis line at any time to be able to reach out to the assigned police crisis worker for Riverside. So not only do we see ourselves as clinicians who are there in times of emergency, but we also try to ensure that we're supporting residents all the way through that process and coming up with safety plans and linkage to long-term services in order to really provide stability in times of crisis.
Thank you. So part of this program, I would also like to thank the Riverside Township, especially Supervisor Vera Wilt, for the support that they have offered. The Village of Riverside Public Safety Departments have partnered with the township and their mental health board, and I cannot thank them enough for the financial support and continued assistance of our crisis service program. I would like to introduce Tim Heilenbach from the Riverside Township Mental Health Board to say a few words about some of the services offered by the mental health in the township, mental health board in the township, as well as our partnerships with training of our first responders. Tim?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the Riverside Board, Village Board. I want to thank you for inviting me to your meeting this evening. I've worked with Director Buckley since about May of last year on this program to get a clinician and services in for Riverside Police. As Matt had mentioned, Brookfield and North Riverside have the same one, which is partly funded by Proviso Township. When the village came to Vera and myself about 3 weeks before they approved it and asked if we would be interested in partnering up, I immediately thought, we've got to find the money for this. And we did. And we're very, very pleased to partner up with Riverside on this. We don't want you to be an island. Since then, Director Buckley and I have gone over a few things that we could also do. We have a community resource center here in the building. That community resource center will and can help people out with special needs. They've helped people find housing. They've helped people get doctors or prescriptions, whatever the case may be. They're a big, big resource. Director Buckley and I have started a pilot program for Riverside, and we're going to probably roll it out to Brookfield and North Riverside, where Director Buckley has assigned an officer as a senior liaison. So if the officers are on the street and they come across somebody that's in desperate need, whether it be in their home or on the street, they can take that, give it to Officer Morello, and Officer Morello can contact our Community Resource Center, and we will find help for them as quickly as possible. So we also are providing crisis intervention training, which is going on this week here at the Village Hall. 17 of our first responders from our township partners, Riverside, Brookfield, North Riverside, are taking a certified class, which is certified by the state of Illinois, which is required by the state of Illinois. And we have committed that we will make sure that our officers all get trained, along with some of our firefighters and some of our dispatchers in crisis intervention training. We have a lot of programs. I thank you for this opportunity. I know you have a lot of business tonight, so thank you again for inviting me.
Thank you, Mr. Heilenbach. And I would also like to thank you, Chairperson of the Township Mental Health Board, as well as Ms. Welt, Supervisor of Riverside Township, for your interest and collaboration on this initiative. It is imperative that our taxing bodies work together for the best of our residents, and this collaboration is the latest example of what can be achieved when we work in unison for the better of our community. So thank you very much. Trustees, any questions for Mr. Heilenbach, Sybil, or Director Buckley? Okay, hearing none.
I'd also like to mention John Carroll from the Township Board is here also representing the township. Tim forgot to introduce him, so I'll do it for him. But it's important to have that partnership, as President Ballerine just said, and grateful that you're here to see this also. So thank you.
Thank you.
So providing mental health services has always been a priority of mine, as well as the members of the Village Board and all of the employees here at the Village of Riverside. We have recently made great strides in being able to offer services to those in need. We will continue to expand our programs and develop them to deliver the best possible services to those requiring our assistance. I want to personally thank the members of the Village Board, Manager Francis, President's Behavioral Health, and the Riverside Township for providing us with the necessary services to offer to our community. So thank you very much. I look for many great things coming out of our programs. We've made a lot of progress already. We will continue to do so, and I think it's vitally important to our community to keep that moving forward and to keep doing these things and working together to do so. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Director Buckley. We move on to the manager's report. Ms. Francis?
I do not have a report this evening.
Okay. Residents' comments on any non-agenda item? Yes, sir. Please view it.
I'd like to begin by introducing myself. My name is Thomas Dixon, son of Robert Dixon, former president of the Olmsted Society. I live on Uvedale Road, and I attend Riverside Brookfield High School. Secondly, I'd like to thank the board for hearing me. However, I'm here to talk about the prevalent issue of danger for cyclists along Forest Avenue en route to RB. Every student in Riverside goes along Forest Avenue to get to school, and it creates a sort of bottleneck effect because many students drive cars. As someone who bikes almost every single day to school, I'm putting my life at risk. The current situation along Forest Avenue is extraordinarily dangerous, considering there are parking lanes on both sides as well as 2 lanes of traffic. Before and after school, it becomes so dangerous and congested, the traffic is almost at a complete standstill. Cycling through this is nearly impossible and inherently dangerous. I've been subjected to this danger for many years, and therefore I know a lot about it. In these years, I've seen students come within inches of being hit by cars. I myself have nearly been hit a number of times. Every morning, as I bike in what little space there is, I am almost hit by open doors and motorists trying to rush their kids to school. At this point, it is only a matter of time before a student is seriously injured or even killed. And by then, it will be too late. Dreams dead, parents grieving, and potential lawsuits. However, this can all be prevented. Bike lanes are a necessity along Forest Avenue for the well-being of the students. With bike lanes, there's an element of safety that has never been seen before along Forest Avenue. It will encourage more students to bike to school, which will lead to a healthier student population. Now, a counterpoint to my request for bike lanes may be that bike lanes are too expensive. And to that I answer, can you put a price on the lives of our youth? Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Dixon. You and I have had some conversations in the past on emails, and I appreciate your concern. I've passed your concerns along to Director Buckley. Forest Avenue is it's not only, it's a business, it's also, there's businesses there, so they need parking. We do have a bike lane. I know you would like a dedicated bike lane, and we will continue to work and try to figure out a way to safely transverse our children to RB.
May I?
Sure.
Okay. The current bike lanes are, in my opinion, they have good intentions, however, they're inefficient because they are simply markings on the road that people drive over and completely ignore, which is the unfortunate reality. But if there were more dedicated bike lanes, as you would maybe see in a major city or anywhere, I'm pretty sure there's some up north, like in Evanston, that would lead to an infinitely safer commute for me and many of my peers, just due to the complete ignorance of motorists almost every day, consistently. They simply just drive over them, and there's nothing you can do.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Mr. Dixon. Thank you for coming. We move on to our consent agenda this evening. Approve the voucher list of bills, March 3rd, 2022. Approve the Village Board of Trustees regular meeting minutes, February 17th, 2022. Review and file Finance January 2022 monthly report. A resolution on authorizing the execution of agreement between the First American Bank of Riverside and the Village of Riverside, Illinois concerning parking. A resolution authorizing the sale and disposal of personal property owned by the Village of Riverside. And a motion to approve a special event application for the Riverside Historical Commission's Olmsted's 200th birthday party to be held on April 26, 2022 at the Riverside train station. Anything on this consent agenda that any trustee would like to have removed? Hearing none, if I can have a motion.
Motion made.
Motion by trustee Gallegos,
Second.
second by trustee Marshazga. Any questions? If not, Ethan, can you please call the roll?
Trustee Gallegos.
Here. Or aye. Aye.
Trustee Marshazga.
Aye.
Trustee Hannan.
Aye.
Trustee Evans.
Aye.
Trustee Clarity.
Aye.
Trustee Pollock.
Motion passes. Thank you. We move on to department, boards, and commission reports. Trustees? Hearing none, we move on to our pending business. I'm sorry. We do have one. I missed A, Economic Development Commission 2022 Work Plan, which is right here on my computer. I'm sorry, Jennifer, please.
No worries. Hi, Jennifer Fournier. Can I take this? Can I? Or, yeah, it's okay. Chair for the Economic Development Commission. So when we were tasked with the annual plan for 2022, I wanted to make sure that we had strong KPIs that we could measure our goals against. We came up with 3 goals, the first being impacting the sales tax revenue. So this would be something that we could, any effort that economic development is tasked with, projects or otherwise, we could look back and say, did this contribute to increasing the sales tax revenue? Our goal is to increase it by 5% year over year. The types of projects that would be in support of it would be to attract retail and sales tax revenue generating businesses to town, and then also attracting visitors to town and maintaining our residents utilizing the businesses that are in town to participate in our local economy. Our second goal is to increase overall awareness. So publicity, we want people to know this is a travel-worthy destination, a great place to raise your kids, great schools, great artisan business community, and the projects that would would contribute to this would be our partnership with Visit Oak Park, media, communications, and then also working with local realtors to extend to outreach and potential homeowners. This one's a little bit more difficult to measure. Word of mouth can't be measured, but we are going to track impressions to media impressions. And so that we can say, so articles, anytime we're on Channel 9, anytime there's something Riverside oriented in the news, you know, how often are we coming up in these types of conversations? That is something that we can measure easily. So we're really looking for a benchmark this year because we don't have anything to measure against. The third goal is activation of the train station. And so for the last 8 years, train stations really been left empty without a tenant. So we would like to see somebody adding to our business community with a business there. Or we would like to see some type of economic draw in something similar to Berwyn has the shops, which they took as an example out of Batavia, and that's an opportunity to have small startup type businesses that then attract. So in Batavia, for example, it's only 3 days a week, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, set amount of hours. Each of them have a little shed size business that they lease out, and it attracts a ton of people just to shop, you know, as if they were on vacation, but it's in the downtown of the community. It supports new ideas, it supports burgeoning businesses. So something, whether we could do a pop-up there or we had a full-time tenant, we'd like to have something that would be a magnet for our community to attract visitors, shoppers, et cetera, spend the day here. So that is, and we also hope to take advantage of, and Karen submitted this for us, the grants. So we worked at the end of last year trying to get grants and take advantage of money that was out there to utilize that space in the best possible way. Any questions about any of our goals as we are into first quarter?
Trustees?
All right.
Jennifer, thank you for all you and your commission do. I was looking at the Visit Oak Park website today because I happened to get an email from Eric. And out of all the communities, Riverside's page is the only one that actually had businesses on it. So I take that as a direct correlation to EDC's work and your work on that board. So thank you very much. It was really good.
You're welcome. We've been working overtime trying to get those pages and in the entire community overhauled. So there's going to be so many more opportunities for Riverside with the village or with Visit Oak Park, but also for what we can display as a community. So there's a ton of content that's being added to that. And a lot of media opportunities as we saw in the fall. So we hope to see even more of that coming as spring and summer season comes upon us.
And as we get closer to the Tour de Proviso ride here in Riverside, I'll keep you posted and
Yep.
we can work together in trying to make that a really good day for people to come here.
Yeah, I think it's so awesome that Riverside and with your leadership has coupled with Maywood and Broadview and is leveraging partnership into these communities. And I think it's awesome for everyone who lives here and everyone who doesn't. So thank you for taking that leadership role.
Appreciate it. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We move on to new business, discussion regarding the expansion of contractor registration types. Ms. Monroe.
Hello, good evening. I'll take this off temporarily. Okay, so earlier, or I should say late in 2021, staff was asked to consider whether the village should register additional contractor types, including those that perform landscaping, lawn care services, or snow removal. And so what we went to was a prior survey had been conducted in 2016 of regional communities that contract exactly those types of contractors. And we updated that survey. We went out and asked the same communities to participate in that to get some feedback about what the general regional use of contractor registrations was. And so the results of that survey, just for your kind of discussion purposes, the results were that about 12 of those 28 respondents in the most recent survey, so a little over 40%, say that they register any of the 3 contractor types. Landscaping is one of the most commonly registered. So when you think about landscapers currently that register in Riverside, they're only performing hardscape activities. So inlay of brickwork, retaining walls, and they may do additional landscaping work, but it's really those hardscape type issues that we're concerned about being done properly. Especially as we pay attention to stormwater issues and those sorts of things. We felt that's included in our registrations. We do not register those that do snow removal or other type of general maintenance landscaping services. Only 3 of those surveyed communities register all 3 types of contractors. It was infrequent, if ever, that they would register only a lawn care service or a snow removal company. It was either the landscapers or all 3, or none. Let's see, they generally require the same amount of general liability, workers' compensation, and insurance limits. And a couple of communities would register the landscaping companies just as they do with any other contractors that work in that community. The registration cycle we would have if we were to propose this, either registering landscapers, lawn care services, or snow removal at the wish of the board, would be an annual renewal cycle that would register. Currently, contractors performing building activities register on a circular basis. So if they registered on March 1st, their registration would be good through February 28th of the next year. Let me see. The current contractor registration fee is $100 for really any type of contractor work, and our insurance requirements are, require a bond, they require general liability, workers' compensation in particular amounts. So I leave it to the board to discuss whether you feel this would be of interest, and staff generally feels that if we were to move ahead with doing such a thing, we would have to spend a little bit of time notifying the potential contractors, preparing information, putting it out on our website, and being able to provide that to anybody with interest in performing work in Riverside. We'd also have to notify the residents, so as they're contracting everyone to perform that work, that those contractors would be required to register. So I'll take any questions or feedback about this item.
Thank you, Ms. Monroe. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak to this agenda item? Hearing none. Trustees, any input?
I'll say something.
Ms. Evans?
I don't know if we are solving a problem by now suddenly making everyone register. But I did want to say that if we are going to have these contractors register, I think it would be smart to set the registration fees on the lower end so that it doesn't burden small businesses, and also that we have materials that are drafted in Spanish.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, I think those are very good suggestions, Kristen. I view the opportunity to register these contractors as a communication tool so that the village can better and more regularly communicate what it expects from its contractors, that do business here and, could potentially impact property, with damage, or, definitely impact quality of life in terms of their hours of operation and how they conduct their business. So I consider this to be a valuable first step. I think, it opens the door for us to have further discussions about, do we need to look at some of our other policies in relation to, what kind of equipment is used and when it's operated. I can tell you, just anecdotally, I represented the village at the community table at the Riverside Farmers Market several times last year, and a number of residents approached me about either contractors that had damaged, shrubs on, the parkway, or who were trimming trees out of cycle at the wrong time of year, or how there was constant noise from leaf blowers, at all hours of the day, Saturday and Sunday too. So these are all things that a registration system would enable us to help improve the quality of life here.
President Ballard.
Thank you. Ms. Clarity?
Question for the village. Do we currently have some sort of mechanism for enforcement for individuals or companies who are operating outside of the permitted noise period? So if you're, I understand we have limitations on when you can operate, noisy leaf blowers and those sorts of things. Do we have a current mechanism to enforce that already?
So we would, if informed, we may be able to connect with community service officer that would be on duty on a weekend, for instance, or so we have made that effort. If there are situations where we want to do a spot check, we could have our code enforcement, building inspection team work on over a weekend to identify whether there's an issue. Last year, I was contacted by, someone who had concerns about activity by a contractor on a property. They had provided, a time and date stamped video of illegal activity occurring, and we were able to address it in that way. I had visited the property prior with some other warnings before venturing into getting a citation to them, but it was really that additional information provided by the residents themselves that allowed me to add to that level of enforcement. So it's not out of the question for us to look at these things. It's hard to enforce that as our system allows right now. If somebody starts up at 7 a.m. or 6 a.m. on a Saturday, it may be challenging. I'm not sure if Manager Francis might have additional comments.
So as Ashley mentioned, a lot of it's complaint driven. So if it's on the weekends and the police department is called, then an officer will go out, and then Director Buckley would then notify Ashley of this issue. If it's someone that should be licensed that isn't, the board a few years back, we kind of did a 3 strikes and you can't do work in the village for a period of time. But that includes those that are contractors that have to be licensed in the village. In this particular scenario, as status quo, we don't have that. We can issue citations, obviously, but that's for code enforcement. That would go to adjudication, and ultimately the hearing officer would have to hear as it relates to that ticket. So it's then a question to the board of how do you want us to if you do want us to go down this path, do you want us to structure it similar to how we've done it with construction? And that if they're doing things either outside of the hours, there's your strike 1. And so then if you get 3 strikes, then you're no longer allowed to do work in the village. I believe it's for 18 months. But I'm not 100% sure on that particular date, so I'd have to look that up to be certain.
That's helpful. So I'm hearing that we already have existing mechanisms, though albeit imperfect, to enforce the hour restrictions that we have, but that perhaps we'd be contemplating an ordinance that would give us a little bit more teeth with those who have registered to prevent them from operating in the village, but it wouldn't give us any additional teeth for those that continue to operate in the village without being registered.
Right, because right now we don't have a registration requirement for landscapers unless they're installing hardscape or those that are doing snow removal. I know more specifically during the last significant snowfall, the CSO was actually issuing citations to those that were illegally plowing in certain areas and then leaving the snow in the middle of the street that Public Works had just cleared. So it's some of those types of education pieces, because we don't know who's coming into town, that we can't necessarily educate them on proper snow removal. I think that one's kind of a no-brainer, so to speak, but
just to be clear, we're relying on people to register. I think perhaps it's fair to acknowledge that not everybody's going to register, even though they should, right? We're aware that there are contracts that aren't registered in town, and so your ability to provide education is really only to those good actors who have registered.
certainly, yes.
Trustee Hannan?
I think we know, I think, what the problem is. It's landscapers operating before and after permitted hours. It's landscapers parking, going the wrong way in the street. It's snow removal people putting snow in the middle of the street as opposed to disposing in it. To me, that's enforcement issues. I'm trying to get my arms around, especially in the context of lawn service. These are the guys that come, cut the lawn, blow the grass, clean things up, occasionally pull a weed. I've used several landscaping companies. What I love about the ones that I found and used, usually young entrepreneurial person, trying to make his way, build a business. Usually it's one truck. 2 years later, it's a couple different trucks. 4 years later, he has a whole crew and a bunch of guys. He gets too corporate and he doesn't pay attention to me, and then I fire him and find the other new guy. And I like that entrepreneurial spirit, and I just hate to think that some guy who's trying to earn a buck, with a couple of lawn machines and a truck, all of a sudden, has to go through some red tape to feed his family. I mean, that doesn't address the problem at all by having them register. So I'm opposed to this, and I think the solution we're looking for is, tougher fines, tougher enforcement for those bad actors that, if they're running the lawnmowers at 6 o'clock in the morning, there should be somebody there to give them a ticket of substance. I mean, it's up to them to go on the village website and figure out what's permitted. It's not up to us to educate them as to what the law is. If they park on the wrong side of the street, they should get a ticket. And it should be of substance. If somebody's doing the snow, I love that the community service officer was out there. But I think it's changing it to a code enforcement to something else so that there's some teeth and they start to pay attention. I don't see the purpose of getting them registered. That doesn't solve any of the problems we've been talking about.
Thank you. Anyone else? Trustee Gellin?
I'm really split on this one because I do empathize with the small business, high school kid, college kid who's just trying to, earn some cash to support himself during education. But I do see a lot of the larger vehicles out there, which are putting a lot of wear and tear on our streets. So I'm kind of torn on this. I'd like to explore it further before I make up my mind, but I'm still in the middle on that one.
Well,
Doug?
I'm sorry. Doug? Yes.
Thank you, President Valerie.
Keep forgetting his name.
Can everyone hear me okay?
Perfect.
I'm open to more discussion. I share the concerns that Trustee Hannon expressed, but I also share the concerns that Trustee Marshansky expressed. We talked about this as a board back in 2016, I think it was. Jessica can look that up exactly when. And my recollection is we had 2 or 3 meetings where we discussed this. And again, I'm going off memory, but I believe initially there was a lot of momentum to do this. And then after we got deeper into the issue, the tide kind of changed and we backed off and we did not ultimately establish a registration or licensing program. So I wouldn't mind more discussion. I think the cost benefit analysis is really what this is all about, and what you're hearing is, obviously the costs that we charge contractors would have to cover, or the fees we charge them would have to cover all of our costs. And then we have to measure that against what the benefit is to the community. And Trustee Hannon makes a good point. Is this just, we need better enforcement, or does this registration program actually solve the problem? I guess it's a non-answer, but I'm open to more discussion, but I can certainly understand both sides of this particular issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pollack. Ms. Evans?
I just wanted to follow up on Trustee Marzazga. I do think that the communication platform would be very helpful. Yeah, I did not consider that. But yeah, my only fear is that we would be creating barriers for the small businesses.
I agree with you. And I hear over and over, I think, and Mr. Hannon's right, it is the responsibility of the contractor to make sure they know. But all of this is, I think, revolves around an education. There's not that many people that do lawn work in here. I mean, I see, there are a lot, but there's not that many companies. I think if we were able to educate them that they knew the proper hours, they know not to park on the wrong side of the street. I mean, that seems like that's an easy thing to say, but FedEx and UPS do it all the time. So even if we just had an educational, brochure for these small businesses, I think most of them would look at it and follow through and be good actors. I think one of the things we need to think about is, We do have an issue when not a landscaper, but somebody that comes in and does major planting or makes different beds or whatever in a yard, if they change the topography of the yard, then it affects their neighbors. And we have to address how do we carve that out. But I think we got to start, and I think we have some at least something to go on. Ms. Clarity?
I don't disagree that if the goal is education, there's a way to do that that's doesn't necessarily require registration. I think registration takes up staff time, forces your legitimate or your good actors to pay a fee to continue to be a good actor and doesn't get the fee from those that aren't. And you could probably achieve similar results with a pamphlet and some driving around, because I agree with President Ballerine, there's a finite population of these individuals out there that you could educate on those. I'm also, maybe I'm just missing how, I understand the point about changing the topography and how that can be impactful, but unclear how registration or ordinance would change that, other than, are we requiring people to submit plans for review? I'm not, other than education. So I'm open to discussion.
Permit. If you're going to do some major planting, whether it's over a certain amount, a permit is needed or something like that. I'm sorry. Go ahead. That's where I was. Again, it's fluid.
Completely agree. And I agree with Trustee Pollack. I'm completely open to continued discussion. I just want to be cautious about not expending too much staff time, or incurring legal costs on drafting an ordinance when we're so far apart.
Mr. Hannon?
You learn a lot about speeding when you get that first $200 speeding ticket. That's a great education. So, I go back to, they want to have an education on when the hours are. They get a nice hefty ticket if they start at 6:30 in the morning. They'll learn real quick that that's not an efficient way to operate in Riverside.
Well, maybe, I agree, but maybe we do it with where we have, some sort of warning system first, and we give them a educational aspect, and then we follow. Then if, they don't follow up, then we can exactly do that. We take a little bit more punitive measures. So I think we have a consensus that we want to move on. I also think we have a consensus that we don't want to affect our small businesses. We want to protect our neighbors. We want to protect staff's time, so we don't want to be over onerous. Doug, do you have your hand up? Is that what I'm catching that little? Go ahead, Mr.
Yes, I do, thanks. I was thinking along those same exact lines that you were going to, and I would like to suggest that we ask staff to come back to us at the next meeting or the meeting after that with a program of education and enforcement, an aggressive program of education and enforcement. Perhaps it includes, brochure that the community service officer or whomever drops off every time they see a landscaper out there in the spring, with information about what the rules are and the consequences of not following the rules, and maybe see how that goes this year, or at least review a program like that before we decide to take any further action, and then maybe even do a trial program over the summer and revisit this later.
Thank you. I agree. I think that sums up what we're looking at pretty close. Mm-hmm. Okay?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Good direction.
Good. Next thing on our agenda is the discussion on the allocation of a $100,000 capital grant that we received for green spaces a couple of weeks ago. We have a couple of options that Director Johns would like to lay out for and get a discussion for us on how we feel. Go ahead, Director Johns.
In 2019, the village was approved for a $100,000 capital grant for green space improvement. This grant was recently released for the village to move forward with. I presented before you several different options of ideas of what this could be spent on. One option is the village's annual tree contract for cyclic and emergency tree repair. This could either offset the funding that was budgeted for this expense, or we could use this project to apply for the grant as it was a bid project that meets state requirements, and switch that funding for several smaller green improvement projects that were unbudgeted. Some of the projects that were discussed in the past with the board was Gateway Landscaping, an Indian Gardens athletic field, and upgrading to exposed aggregate park paths at Patriots, Turtle, Harrington, or along Common to Nuttall. Does the board have any direction or would like any more information on any of these projects?
Or have any ideas of their own on how they would, things that the village would like to explore? Mrs. Evans?
Hi. So if we were to, say we decided to do the tree contract and we already have it, we already have the money budgeted?
Correct.
So would that not be supplanting?
What it would either reduce the expense that was, or increase the revenue to cover the expense that was already budgeted, which could be used for general fund surplus and future capital projects, or we could create an allotment of assigned fund balance to use on future green project improvements.
So you're saying it's allowable
It's allowable.
through the grant?
The way the submittal for these grants follows, we have to follow Illinois DCEO grant requirements, which makes it difficult to submit for small programs. It's easier if we allow one large program that is bid by the state and follows all the rules of the state process than piecemealing it out into like $10,000 projects.
I just would like to put a request in to consider Patriots Park for the new trail. It's actually in very bad shape, and I haven't looked at the other parks, so maybe they're in bad shape as well. But the community does a lot to maintain that park, and it's also it's a veterans park. It's a park that sort of honors veterans, so my choice would be to put exposed aggregate park paths at Patriots.
Anyone else? Mr. Hannon?
In my thoughts, the sort of spirit of this grant is to, do something in addition. I'm sort of uncomfortable with, using this for our annual tree contract that we've already budgeted. I like the idea of something to improve our parks. Having children well beyond college, I have not been to a park in a while, so I will defer to others on which parks would be appropriate, but I think that'd be a nice use of the grant, and to let the community know that this is coming from a capital funds grant from the state of Illinois, and really make it into something memorable.
Thank you. Ms. Clarity?
Do we have any data on which of our parks are the most used? I mean, Harrington's large, the fields get used, but do we know, like, any sense of usage? I'm just thinking in terms of how to be the most impactful if we're looking at parks, and I see perhaps an opportunity to affect Turtle, Big Ball, and Indian Gardens here in the math.
So typically, we gauge it by activity as opposed to just kind of transient usage. But I can tell you that Harrington and probably Turtle Park are the most used. Turtle Park, just because it's in the center of town, that gets a lot of activity, especially during the daytime. Patriots Park gets usage, but because that's on one of the far ends of town, it doesn't get as much usage. But I would say Harrington and Turtle would probably be the maximum.
And do you have an opinion? Your opinion would be valuable to me on where, as it relates specifically to the parks or the athletic fields. You're more familiar with the conditions there, where improvement, is there an area here that sticks out where improvement would be most important or is in most in need?
The Indian Gardens athletic field would allow us to expand programming and also help us with maintenance. Right now, the only dedicated soccer field we have is the Harrington Large Field. So all of our other soccer fields are put up and installed in the outfields of the ball fields. So those fields never get a rest, really. They go right from baseball season right into soccer season, so they get really run down. So we could rotate our fields. It would allow us to do that, and it also would give us another dedicated field. So we can expand the program or rotate the fields depending on the numbers that we get. We could also, we've worked with lacrosse programs in the past. That's something we could bring and use on that field. So even during soccer season, it wouldn't interfere. Occasionally, now it seems that baseball season gets longer and longer every year. So even in the fall, we have to sometimes take the nets down, put them back up, and because it'll interfere with baseball. So that would allow us to expand programming, generate more revenue, give us more versatility. But I also see the value in the aggregate paths. They are used a lot at the parks they're at. It would improve accessibility, their maintenance issues, of course. Harrington Park is the only one that I would pick out. It currently has an asphalt path that's intact, so I wouldn't say that was a priority, but I would agree with Trustee Evans that Patriots Park could use the new surfacing, or even Turtle Park as well.
Thank you.
Trustee Pollock, do you have your hand up?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I do.
Looks like it.
Ms. Astor?
Hand up.
Yes, I was just wondering, with respect to the Indian Gardens athletic field, what exactly is the nature of the improvement that would be contemplated there? I mean, I know you talked about rotating fields, but would something be done to alter them from grass, or what is the proposal?
No, that would basically just be leveling and grading that
Okay.
area. That was heavily populated with ash trees, so when those had to be removed, it opened up that area quite a bit. So we went out and measured it. We would be able to fit a field there. We did meet this, I would have to check with them again, but years back, we did consult with Christopher Burke Engineering, and the only stipulation they had is that they would like to see that leveling and grading done by excavation as opposed to fill, because fill in a floodway presented some challenges. So it would basically just be going in, kind of scraping off the top layer, leveling, rototilling everything, leveling it out, and then putting turf back or seed.
Okay, great, thank you. And then I have a follow-up question for you, Karen, and that is, our executive summary here says that it is recommended that the village submit for the annual tree contract. And is that because we know that it already meets certain protocols and that there are risks to submitting for one of these other programs because we have not done so before and they're smaller and you'd have to do multiples, and if one wasn't approved, it would be a problem?
The reason for the the reason for the recommendation to submit for the annual tree contract is because we believe it meets the state bid requirements. And I think we can work to present it to the public that the improvements made at various smaller parks are derived from the surplus from the capital grant utilized. All of the projects that we need to submit to the state for the grant reimbursement need to follow state bid protocol. So when we're talking about, for example, a $20,000 athletic field, if that needs to go through state bidding process, I'm assuming the price will double.
Okay, that is exactly the clarification that I wanted from the outset. So it would be all right for us to vote to approve for the annual tree contract, but then also have a discussion about these other things and where the priorities might be for spending the excess that was offset.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. And then I'll just put in my 2 cents worth regarding these other projects. I think it just my tourism background and the presentation that we've just had from Ms. Fournier from the Economic Development Commission, I think that it would be very important to increase our visual presence at all of our gateways to attract more visitors to enjoy our wonderful landmark landscape and our historic architecture. So that would be a priority for me. But I also do see the need for helping our families that live here. And I love the idea because for years and years and years, my kids played on these fields in Indian Gardens, and I like the idea that we would have, a more functional space there for our families to recreate. So those would be my 2 votes. I always, take a pause when it comes to pouring concrete, because concrete is expensive, concrete is forever. And there's a lot that's been proposed in our packet. And I guess on those issues, I would really like to know that there would be some input from the Preservation Commission and the Landscape Advisory Commission before we, start taking away from green space per se and substituting concrete that wasn't there before. The job that was done in collaboration with the Parks and Rec Board and then Preservation and Landscape Advisory on the Swan Pond path was phenomenal. The result was so good, and it is so enjoyed by our community. And I think that kind of input would be necessary for me. I would need to have that assurance that that would happen before expressing an opinion on any of those.
Thank you. Anything else? I think your explanation on the annual tree contract, it seems like that makes sense. I understand what Mr. Hannon explains, and I agree with you 100%, but knowing that if we take this money and move it, we can then fill in the gaps with the other thing, and it looks like the tree contract is the easiest to get through the bidding process and the grant process.
I would say either the tree contract or some combination of the exposed aggregate paths, but then doing only paths with that 100,000.
I also like the idea of, start rotating, our paths from the, I personally like the cinder gravel paths that we have at Patriot Parks and Turtle Park, but then again, I don't pull the weeds out there. And I always, again, they're hardscapes already, and the blacktop path, but, I think we can work through those as, as budget time comes, or as we figure this out. Does everybody agree that the trees make sense?
I'd be, in favor of that.
Mr. Hannon, you good with that?
No, I think it makes sense.
Okay. Mr. Pollack? We got the thumbs up. Thank you, Doug. All right.
Oh, wait, can I just make one more
Yes,
comment?
please.
Since you did mention the gravel walkways, I'm sure that Ron can say more, but the gravel is insufficient for the pathway. It looked nice when it was first put in. It was orange. It's like kind of my park. I live a block away, and I walk it almost a couple times a week. And the gravel's everywhere, and it just becomes completely full of weeds. It's not really a path. It's like a weedy. So, I mean, it looked nice in the beginning, but I wouldn't really.
I agree.
I don't know if it's sustainable.
I agree. And I think maybe we should have Public Works give us a rundown of the 3 paths that are out there and give us, which one needs the repair the best. And that will help us with that. And then we can work with the Gateway Landscape in the Indian Gardens and then figure out what we can, the paths, and we can make a decision from that. But for now, let's do the annual tree contract.
Perfect.
Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. We move on to the trustee reports and communications. Do I have any reports tonight?
Oh, this
There we
is,
go.
why, yes, indeed. Thank
Ms.
you for mentioning
Marczewska,
it.
please.
All right. So this year, Riverside, together with all the other Olmsted design landscapes across the nation, celebrate the bicentennial of Frederick Law Olmsted's birth. Our very own historical museum will be throwing Olmsted a 200th birthday party on Tuesday, April 26th, and everyone is invited. The party will be at the train station from 4 to 6, and it's free because it's a party. And yes, there will be cake. We all hope that everyone will join us there. After the party, you can head over to the library, where at 7:00 p.m., the Olmsted Society and Shailin Hora of the Seed will present a sizable gift to the library and the community in honor of Olmsted's 200th. It is not a spoiler to share that this gift is a museum-quality botanical box. The seeds were gathered from Riverside's natural areas by residents of all ages during last year's seed hunts, and they've been preserved and artistically arranged over the map of Olmsted's general plan for Riverside, framed with architectural salvage from Riverside area homes. So many residents are a part of this gift, from those who gathered the seeds with their own 2 hands to those who bought commemorative Olmsted 200 boxes to help raise the funds for the library gift and for the new Olmsted Overlook to be planted along Fairbank. Thank you to all who have contributed. And for those who are just hearing about this now, it's not too late to chip in on Olmsted's 200th birthday presents. You can visit olmstedsociety.org to find out how. We will have more 200-themed events throughout the year, but we hope that you've marked your calendars for Tuesday, April 26th, so we can all celebrate the big day together.
Thank you, Ms. Marshaska. Anyone else? Hearing none, we have the need for an executive session tonight, which we will not reconvene, and I can entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn to executive session.
To discuss to discuss the setting of price for sale or lease of village property. We have a motion by Mr. Gallego, second.
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Evans. Motion carries.
Call the roll.
Oh, can you please call the roll?
Trustee Marshaska.
Yes.
Trustee Gallegos.
Aye.
Trustee Hannan.
Aye.
Trustee Evans.
Aye.
Trustee Clarity.
Aye.
Trustee Pollock.
Aye.